thank you so much to Beth for allowing us to create a Preppin Data challenge out of this presentation that you did for the Tableau Prep user group. So to recap, what we're trying to do is we're working with case data and we want to recreate this chart. So we have these cases that are opened on specific dates, and in this quarter we want to see, so we've got these, we start off with these opening cases, we then have new cases come in, we complete this many cases in that quarter, and this many cases get deferred. So going into the next quarter, we have these 18 cases continuing, and we can hover over to see the breakdown by rating. Okay, so let's go to Tableau Prep and start off with this workflow. So we have Business Unit A, we have their data here, and we can see that we have a lot of information about each of the tickets, the owner of those tickets, the issues, some information about the date and the status and the risk level. So let's first of all take these three fields and turn them into one actual date. So in order to do that, we're going to use a calculated field called make date. So we're going to use that year, that month, and that date field to make a date lodged field. And then we can go ahead and get rid of those three additional fields that we no longer need. Then we saw that our risk rating had the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And we want to use our lookup table in order to turn this into, what do those 1, 2, and 3s actually mean? Is one good or is one bad? So we take a look at our lookup table there and we see that we have the following table below. So 1 is low and 3 is high. So we join these together, the rating to the risk level, and we're doing a left join here, even though all 18 rows would be coming through regardless of if it was a left join or an inner join. This is making it future proof, so that if we had, for example, one that had a risk rating of a 4, we're not going to lose that risk, that case. So that's keeping the workflow dynamic. Then we're just going to go ahead and remove the additional fields that we don't need. We can then take a look at Business Unit B's data. So if you saw on the input image from the Preppin Data challenge, you'll notice that this had some extra information at the top, which is why we've needed to use the Cleaned with Data Interpreter option here, so that we can pick up that table with the data within it. So then you'll see that the structure of this table is very similar to what we've ended up with in our Business Unit A part of the workflow. So therefore, we can union these two together. So you may have noticed when you unioned them that some of these fields didn't line up correctly. Maybe you had to merge some of the fields together. And remember, to merge fields, you can either click on two fields holding down the control button to merge them. An option would come along at the top. Or you can simply drag them on top of one another to merge them. Okay, you can see that all of my fields have already been merged because I have this blue and green indicator below each of the headings there. So that wasn't an issue for right now to have to solve. Okay, now we're coming up to that classification element. And Beth did a great job explaining this in the user group, so I'm going to try and explain it just as well. So first of all, we need a field for the beginning of the quarter. So we're using the date trunc calculation, truncating that date from today to being a quarter. If you're doing this challenge later in the future, you may need to just input the date as the 1st of October 2021 in order to get the same output. But if you're in this quarter right now, then you can use the date trunc calculation and that keeps it dynamic again. Okay, and you can see that is a date time, so we change the date type to being a date. So just clicking on the date type, changing it to being a date. Now we have those classification calculations to work on. So first of all, let's start with the opening cases. So that's where if the date lodged is less than the beginning of the quarter, then we want to assign that a value of 1. And if not, we don't give it any value, so it's a null. Similarly, we do that for the new cases as well. We create this extra field where we have either a 1 if it's a new case or a null value. And that might seem strange. You might have initially approached this problem and thought that I'll create a calculated field that has if its date lodged is less than the beginning of quarter, then the word opening cases and then else new cases. But instead we've created these two fields where we have our ones within them. And as you can see, the nulls here correspond to the ones in the opening cases there. And the reason that we're doing this is just to make counting later easier. Okay, then we come on to the status. So again, this similar thing where we're saying if the status is deferred, then a 1, otherwise null. And the same with the completed status. And again, this is just we're creating these ones so that we can aggregate and sum them up and count the number of cases that are in each of these categories. So that's our next step, is to aggregate, grouping on the risk rating, and then summing each of those 4 classified fields that we just created. We then want to make one field for the continuing cases. And if you'll remember, the formula for that is opening cases plus new cases minus the completed and minus the deferred. You'll notice that we also have this ZN function wrapped around the deferred, and that's because there are some nulls. If you look at our aggregate here, in our deferred cases, there is some null values because there are none in the low risk rating level. And if we left this as a null, then our addition and subtraction, it would just end up being null because Tableau Prep needs to know how to treat that null. And we used to tell it to treat it as a 0. So that's an important step to remember there too. And finally, what we want to do to reshape that data is just to pivot all those fields where we classified and created that continuing cases field so that then we have 3 fields remaining and we have those status, cases and ratings. So I hope you enjoyed that challenge. I thought it was a great one for the fundamentals of prep, and I had to get you thinking about how you want to structure your data. So thanks very much for watching.